Hello everyone, and today I will be talking about 5 more Drag Race episodes that probably just shouldn't have aired. Starting us off is All Stars 8 Episode 11, which is the Fame Game Variety Extravaganza Talent Show. This is how you ruin a completely perfect twist in one episode. Throughout the entire season, there was near constant mention of the Fame Games, where the fans would get to give queens a cash prize based off their unaired runway looks of the season. As a concept, I think the Fame Games twist is amazing. A lot of these queens are spending a lot of money on runways that don't get seen by the vast majority of fans. Unfortunately for the queens participating in the twist and the fanbase as a whole, production decides that episode 11 is going to be the talent show. Then production announces that the winners of the talent show will get to spin a wheel for a vote multiplier. I don't think I need to say why this is a terrible idea and completely defeats the purpose of the Fame Games, but yeah, if a queen is able to win a 3 times multiplier for her votes, yeah, that's it, the Fame Games do not matter. What production did was pretty much just assign a $50,000 cash prize to this challenge. The result of this is that pretty much everyone but Lala and James gets completely screwed, specifically Jessica Wilde, Kahana Montrese, and Darian Lake. In Jessica's case, she did great all season and had a lot of fan support, and I think if it had come down to an actual vote, Jessica would have had a great shot. Then on the other hand, Kahana did a great job in terms of the unaired runways, and if we're voting solely based off that, I would give it to Kahana. Then we have Darian, who the night before the fan vote went on a massive social media rampage arguing why she should win. It was hilarious, it was iconic, and it was one of the first times we actually saw a queen go out there and actually campaign for a title. All of this was amazing, but due to the twist, it never really mattered. The only queens with literally any shot at winning the Fame Games were James and Lala. While both of these queens were very much still deserving, it really sucked that these queens were really the only 2 could win. If that wasn't enough though, the challenge as a whole was just not good. In terms of variety, Naysha danced along to a song, Darian did comedy, and Alexis sang live. Then for the remaining 6 queens, every single one of them did an original track of some form, whether it was lip-synced or sung. A lot of queens were able to do very good and iconic performances, but yet again we see a variety show completely lacking in variety, and overall just not a great way to end this twist. The first episode that probably shouldn't have aired is the Season 13, Episode 13 Acting Challenge. To make this video, I had to rewatch this challenge, and Jesus Christ, that might have been the longest 10 minutes of my life. Beyond the regular, all Drag Race acting challenges are kind of bad. One of the worst things about this challenge is how completely ridiculous these parts were. Not only were the parts received by Gottmik, Rosé, and Simone pretty much destined to be the top 3, but some of the roles, I would say Gottmik, Candy, and Olivia, were specifically written for that specific queen. This resulted in a pretty much guaranteed bottom 2 of Candy Muse and Olivia Lux. While production was able to get everything they wanted out of this episode, it made for a really terrible viewing experience. For the original judging of this episode, we had Rosé getting the win, Simone and Gottmik as high, a bottom 2 of Candy Muse and Olivia, where Candy wins and Olivia is eliminated. Now let's take a look at what should have happened to make this episode better. On most modern seasons of Drag Race, the final competitive episode before the finale is usually the remix. This was the case on seasons 15, 14, 12, and 11, and I would make the argument that it should have been what happened here. If we move up the Lucky Remix by 1 episode, we get an incredibly similar result to the original season. Based off how every queen did in verse writing challenges, I think the winner of the challenge is going to be Gottmik, with Rosé as high. Then for the bottom queens, with how badly Olivia was doing in these challenges, I really can't imagine she'd be able to pull it together for this, so she is getting the chop no matter what. Then for the remaining 2 placements, we have a high and a bottom. I think it would probably end up being Simone as high and Candy in the bottom, pretty much guaranteeing that we get almost the exact same result, and there's really no impact on the season as a whole. The only difference is that Gottmik now has 1 extra win, and we didn't have to sit through that terrible acting challenge. Next up is the Down Under Season 1, Episode 7 Talent Show. It has been talked about before by many people. This season was a hot mess. Every part of this season that could possibly go wrong went wrong, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. We saw production randomly throw Elektra in the bottom to get rid of Coco. We have etc. get thrown under the bus and eliminated pretty much just because she called out a certain queen. And then we have Anita, who did an all-around safe job, get eliminated because she was too much of a threat to the queen who shall not be named. Another storyline that was constantly going on this season is the mistreatment of Elektra. All season long, she is being pushed constantly as the underdog, and while she is able to get a win and victory in that commercial challenge, she is still very much the underdog of the season. All of that to say, since Elektra is a great dancer, the talent show would be a great time to get her a final win and get her some momentum going into the finale. Instead, that is not what happens, and production decides to get rid of the underdog because for some reason in 2020, production decided that the underdogs need to be knocked down another peg. This talent show gives us the iconically great performances of Art eating things and Karen making a single balloon animal. This challenge is an overall disaster and one of the worst possible ways to end out a season. Looking at the judging of the queen who shall not be named getting the win, Art and Karen is low, and then Kita getting rid of Elektra, I genuinely believe that production thought the fanbase was going to accept the queen's apology and just completely forgive everything they did, and then they could just crown her. I can't think of a single other justification for the way this season turned out. In terms of fixing this episode, I think there are two directions production could go in. Number 1, just don't have Art Simone come back and you're good, or number 2, have the Rumix as the final 5 challenge and call it a day. Either one of these options would have resulted in a much more satisfying end for the season. Next up, we have the first episode of Drag Race I ever watched live, Season 13, Episode 1. I know I talk a lot about how this is one of the worst episodes of Drag Race ever and one of the worst twists ever, if not the worst, but this was just awful. Someone in Drag Race production has way more power than they should. For this episode, all the queens have to lip sync for their lives, and then the 7 that do not win get their dreams crushed on national television. This results in what is probably one of the most negative premieres Drag Race has ever had, and an overall unpleasant experience. Not only do we have to watch 7 people get their dreams crushed, but once they've all been given hope that they're not getting eliminated, it is revealed that they will have to literally vote someone they just met out of the season. In general, this just makes for a very unpleasant viewing experience, made even worse by the fact that the episode 2 girl group challenge did not air for another week. For the entire week, all these lip syncs were literally all we got, and it was just not good in really any way, although if I'm being fair, I may be slightly biased about that week as I had COVID. If this had just been a 1 episode miss from production, I could understand that. All of the queens who lost lip syncs were forever branded as losers, and this had long-term implications in the season. Throughout the entire season, they were constantly robbed of wins like Utica, thrown under the bus like Tamisha, or just generally overlooked like Denali. I don't want to get into this explanation again because I know I've done it a lot, but the Pygmalion effect is a psychological effect in which people who are told they are good do better, and people who are told they are bad do worse. Based off what we saw from this episode, one of 2 things is possible. Number 1, the Pygmalion effect is accurate and the queens in the loser circle just generally underperformed. Option 2 is that production decided to make the Pygmalion effect a reality and then rig the season against various members of the loser circle. Either way, the winner circle just kinda outperformed the loser circle all season, and it made for a very unpleasant viewing experience because someone in production didn't realize that one of the major components of an underdog story is the underdog actually succeeding at any point. The next episode that shouldn't have aired is Season 3, Episode 13, The Money Ball. There is a slight chance that on Season 3, production may have overdone it with the sewing challenges. Of the 12 competitive episodes of the season, 4 of them were sewing. We had a design challenge in episode 2, which is fair, I'm fine with that. We have a mid-season design challenge, and yet again, I'm at peace with that. 2 design challenges in a ball is perfectly fine. Then at the final 5, we have the hair ball, and okay, having that ball that early in the season would kind of make sense, and I can excuse that. We have the makeover and returning queen, then we arrive at the second final 4 challenge, and we have yet another ball. Yeah, production may have gone a bit too far in terms of the sewing. Credit where credit is due, all of these queens were very much able to rise to the occasion, and I have so much respect for them. You can see the pain on their faces when this challenge is announced. Unfortunately, unlike on other seasons where production is able to downplay how much of a psychological impact they are having on the queens, Yara Sofia breaks down on stage due to the sheer amount of stress she is under and is eliminated. And while this elimination is fair, it ends out the competitive portion of the season on a very negative note that very much could have been avoided if RuPaul had been able to come up with literally any idea for a challenge other than sewing. To make things even worse, all of this could have been avoided if production had either cut the returning queen or not had a double save. Do you want non-Emmy nominated gay shit? Well then you should check out the RuPaul's Drag Race Rejudged YouTube channel and hit subscribe.